it is time for TBR Jars Check-In. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here to share with you how my first 4 picks from my TBR jars went. I realized I probably should have had them here so I could go and see the TBR jars. Actually, the first picks, I didn't even have the jars set up, so it's okay that I don't have them with me. Yeah, so because I wasn't doing any videos or many videos in January, I thought maybe I would wrap up the 4 picks together, and then the other ones will sort of naturally make their way into Friday reads and individual videos. One of these is actually for one challenge that I tend to do a video on. I don't know if I would do a video on it. Anyway, we're just going to see how things go. So my TBR jars are nonfiction, speculative fiction, romance, and literary or everything else. And my goal this year is to read from those TBR jars. All of the titles in the jars are 300 pages or less, and they are all titles that are all on different challenges and lists that I am working through for my projects, goals, challenges. So yeah, so let's get this started with the nonfiction. So I picked Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art. I didn't even realize it had a subtitle because look at how dark it is. This is by Scott McCloud. This was my nonfiction book pick. It's a nonfiction art book. It's an owned and read book, so it counts for that. This was excellent. I absolutely loved it. It was one book where I would reread it. I have so many notations. I have so many flags. I don't remember what all of them are for. It's also one that unfortunately I can barely articulate why it was so good. But with the exception of saying that it explained in language, actually in pictures and in language, things that I feel like I understand, but I can't articulate. And it did articulate them. And then it also articulated things I didn't understand or didn't even realize were a thing, or that's how they worked, or that's how your brain works. And there was, I think, one of my favorites, this happens to actually be the page. One of my favorites was that it shows a long panel, actually several times, in different formats. So a long panel with dialogue, a long panel in silhouette without dialogue, and then it shows a long panel with no dialogue, and then a long panel as separate panels. And that alone, understanding how you see and understand and interpret and put different emphasis on different characters and different moments, just from the different way the same thing is shown, blew my mind. So that it was worth it even just, I'm so happy I picked up that page. Yeah, I learned so much from this. I enjoyed reading this so much. I think I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I definitely would reread it for a variety of reasons, but one is that there is so much here that I only absorbed so much at a time, and I would love to absorb more. And I love, as I said, for me the big win here is that it explained in language, both words and visual language, things that I either didn't understand or did understand in a way in which that you can relay them. I can't, because I can't remember. Well, I guess I did with that one panel. Anyway, it was brilliant. So, and a big thank you to Jen from Remembered Reads for mentioning this in one of her videos, and also Laura the Manga Hoarder for mentioning it on Instagram, because that inspired me to pick up the book. And I am thrilled it was the first pick. It was a huge win. Okay, up next, speculative fiction pick for the first TBR jar was Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard. So this is a huge series. So my under 300 pages kind of failed on this, because the first story is like, I can't remember, 40 pages, 27 pages, something like that. But if you add all of the stories together, and there's like novels, novellas, novelettes, and then one novel, and then short stories, it's 1,350 pages if you add them all up. So hit and a miss. I actually ended up reading the first 2 stories. So the first one is The Phoenix on the Sword, and the second one is The Scarlet Citadel. One was like 40 pages, one was like 60 pages. And the first one, The Phoenix on the Sword, I really enjoyed it. It was different than I expected. It featured Conan later in life, after he's achieved a lot and sort of like misses his, more adventurous, active days. And then there's an opportunity for them to re-engage in that way. So in terms of like an action adventure, and these are really sort of sword and sorcery, and I didn't even realize that was a subgenre of speculative fiction, and I think it's a subgenre that I really like. Even one of the series that I'm reading right now, the Tiger and Dell series or the Sword Dancer series by Jennifer Robertson, I always say that's fantasy, but in a way, I think it's a lot more sword and sorcery because there's not tons of magic in it. It's more fighting. So, but there is magic. So, and this feels the same way. So I ended up really enjoying the first story. The second story, not so much because it had the things that I was concerned about given the time, and I have read other works by the author. I read the Solomon Kane stories, and so gender and race in the second story become a bit more of an issue in terms of depiction and terms and generalizations and stereotyping and gender crap and stuff like that. Why it didn't play into the first one is that there wasn't anything in it to reflect that. So I'm a little at odds on continuing the series because it did become clear that it was going to be an issue. So I don't know. Conan's also like, he's not the nicest guy at all. But I do enjoy the fighting and the sort of, even, with all of his skills, the sort of against the odds type of situation. So, but I'm really surprised both of the stories are Conan. It doesn't start like the movie with Arnold where Conan starts like at the beginning. It's not an origin story. So that was a huge surprise to me. So anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm going to keep going. I think the next one is, again, sort of 40 to 60 pages. So maybe if I'm somewhere in the month and I'm in the middle, like I finished my speculative fiction read and I want to read another one, I might go there. So, and I know there's this sort of like of the timeness of it, but I'm like, I could easily read books that are more current that don't have that. So it's a bit of a toss-up. It is for my sci-fi, fantasy, and weird exploration. I do count it as I read it for that exploration, but I also give myself like another I read it if I read the whole series. So, yeah. I don't know what to do. Next up, for romance, I picked Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. This one is a reread for me. It is the book series that was made into the TV series True Blood. For me, with book-to-TV adaptations, my format or preferred method is to watch the TV series or season and then read the book or books that are about that season. I find it hard to read the book first because then I'm just sort of comparing, doing a comparison game as what's the same and what's different, but there's often a mystery, especially these ones, there's often a mystery that is like for the whole season, and I feel like if I read it first, it feels like it takes forever for the mystery to unravel. Whereas if I'm watching it, I'm curious and you jump at all the points and you're curious and you get misled or whatever, you think it's this or whatever, and it's more engaging and fun for me to watch the season or series first. In this case, they're both repeats for me. I have watched and read the first 3 seasons and the first 3 books. And so I'm trying to decide what I want to do about this series. That's sort of one of the reasons why it's on it. It's also a prereq for a title that was one of the Vaginal Fantasy Book Club titles, which is one of the lists that I'm working through. So there were multiple challenges with this one in terms of like why to read it. So I did rewatch this first season of True Blood. And I've rewatched the first season several times, so I am quite familiar with it. There are things that I was a little more like, on rewatch, but it was still quite enjoyable. But rereading the book, I gotta say, I don't love the character, the protagonist. I don't like Suki that much. She's... now that I've read lots of paranormal fantasy and paranormal romance and urban fantasy, there are a lot of sort of things that you see again and again in those books or series, and this one has a lot of that. And so now that I've read a lot of that, it's not as interesting or exciting on reread, and also to know where it goes at least a little bit. All that being said, I did look at my notes and I did enjoy the second and third book more, and so that is promising, but I didn't love the first one. I also found that everyone in it is very judgy about women and what they do in their personal lives, and I am not okay with that. So that's one of the challenges I had, and it can be a bit crass in people talking about that, judging other people, and I'm like, that doesn't really quite equate, just doesn't work for me. So I am not quite sure where I land on this one. I gave it a 3-star on first read. I gave it a 3-star on second read. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10, or maybe a little under. The judginess really didn't work for me, and the crassness in some of the situations. However, there are characters I really, really like. I am curious to see where the series goes, a little bit more the TV series than the book series. So unfortunately, I kind of feel like I'm in the same situation as I was before, as I don't quite know what to do with this. Sort of. The next thing I will do is watch season 2, but I don't know if I want to also read the books. I'm not sure. I don't love her as a character. I can't even remember. I think it's first person. And also, there were a couple things I didn't like about how she describes her ability as something other than an ability. So there were some red flags on that kind of stuff. Mind you, the series is now, I think this book was written in 2003. We've come a long way. But so there were just it was a little, and also the series was, the TV series is, it really was pushing the envelope a lot, and at the time I found that, much more engaging and interesting than I feel like now. And I can't believe how long it's been since, I think it's been 15 years or something. Was it 15 years? Where does the time go? Anyway, I will watch season 2, and there's also characters in the TV series that aren't in the book or aren't in the book so far that I really like. So I'm still a little torn, but I'm still going to go back and forth the way in which I do. And I just hope I don't get stuck at the end of book 3, which is what happened last time. I would say my prediction would be it's more important to me to finish watching the TV series than reading the books. So I might opt for that, but I think I'll probably go back and forth at least until the end of book 3 and then see where I stand. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, last up is literary fiction or everything else. And for that, I read Confessions by Kanae Minato, translated from the Japanese by, I think it's Steven Snyder. Yeah, Steven Snyder. So this is a book to film adaptation. The film came out, I think, around 2010-ish. This was tough. I'm not gonna lie, this was tough. This is extremely well written. It is captivating. If you are someone that likes to read something from start to finish and just be totally drawn in and curious and want to know more, this is a great pick for that. I did not read it that way because I don't tend to read that way. So I read it sort of 10 to 20 pages at a time over 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And it was tough. The themes for me are really tough. The themes are, I'm not going to say what they are because it's sort of spoilery, although if you read the back, it's probably on there. Yep. But they aren't themes I am drawn to in fiction or in film. I found it heartbreaking, depressing in sort of an outlook of how people act in certain situations. And it really, truly has 2 themes that are out of my bottom 3 themes probably that I watch or read or enjoy. So this is one of the tough ones, like my Friday reads I was talking about, What Strange Paradise. It's brilliantly written, but it is tough. The subject matter is tough, and this is the same way, and this is one of the reasons why I don't always read a lot of literary fiction. That being said, this is somewhere between, I would say, literary fiction and a thriller. I would say the pace is more of a thriller, and but it is kind of more literary than what I normally read. So, and that always weirds me out a little bit. I think, what do I only like sort of more lighthearted works or something? I don't know. I don't want to get judgy on myself, but it does make me wonder. So it's really tough. It's really tough. But it was compelling. And the opening, I was what's going on? I was just it wasn't confusing. It was compelling. And it is compelling all the way through, but the themes to me are too challenging and disturbing, especially because it's like realistic fiction. It's not when it's speculative fiction, I can sort of go a bit further when it gets darker. This is dark and it's realistic, and so that was too much for me. It was just too much for me. So anyway, but I did finish it. I am thrilled that I finished it. I don't know if I would watch the movie. I don't know how available it is here. I should look into that. I should double check. Maybe it's on Canopy or Hoopla. So I will check that because I would be curious to see the film. It is compelling. Without question, it is compelling. So let me know if you've read it. I've gotten a few people mention like that they're really curious about it. I don't want to shy anyone away from it, especially if you like darker thriller, horror, realistic stuff. Like honestly, it's top notch. It's just not what I quote unquote enjoy, and I found it disturbing, and I couldn't read it at night. And it's not like horror. It's because it's real, like very realistic, but like it just was heartbreaking to me to think that, you know, anyway, I can't say more without saying what the themes are, so I'm gonna leave it there. So that is the mixed bag. Obviously the big win was understanding comics, nonfiction art, yay. Everything else was engaging and interesting and got me thinking and stuff like that, without question. But in terms of like enjoyment factor, it was not super high. The first Conan was great, and I did enjoy watching season 1 of True Blood. It took me longer than expected, but it was fun. It is fun. It's a fun series. It's dark and it's graphic, but there's some characters that I really love in it. So anyway, I will see how things go. Yeah, so my second picks I've already done. I've been reading them in February. I should finish them up in sort of mid-February, and then the new picks will probably be for March. And I didn't mean for it to be monthly, but that's sort of where it's landing, at least as of now. But I am still happy with doing the project as a whole, because I am still happy that I got to all these books, even though if it was a mixed bag in terms of how much I enjoyed stuff. That's how it goes sometimes. All right, there we go, and thank you so much for watching. This was a bit longer than I expected, and I will be back soon with another video. Take care.